All right, here we go. Second try. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We are the Knights of Ren, and joined with me, I have two special guests, Pearl Yeti and Lassie. Welcome to the show. How are you guys doing today?
Doing really good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing quite well.
Yeah, it's a nice weekend.
I agree. All right, so we're gonna just take a quick jump right in and give a look at a bunch of these new spoilers that FFG and a lot of other websites have produced. Mostly, we're gonna focus on the FFG spoilers, but there's a couple of quote unquote controversial ones we want to talk about. But before we get into it, our listeners would love to know, a little bit of your experience in Destiny, the decks you're playing, what you guys think of the game, and are we gonna meet you at Worlds? What do you guys say?
Well, I've been playing it since January. I'm in the Midwest. I love playing lots of blue stuff, Ray, Dooku, Vader. I usually play on Tabletop Simulator now that things have died down. And unfortunately, I won't be going to Worlds. But I'm really excited about the game. I'm excited about the new set, and I am excited for everything Destiny.
Yeah, I'm Pearl Yeti. Up in Portland, there's a pretty good scene. I stumbled into Destiny out Christmas shopping, and it just happened to be pre-release. So I've been playing since then, and the local scene's been pretty strong. We have about 4 game stores that support the game on a weekly basis. Um, Started out with Kylo and Vader. That kind of broke my heart after trying to make it work for a few weeks, and stumbled into Leia Akbar, and I've kind of stuck with that since then.
Okay.
And I did actually get tickets to go to Worlds, so heading out there with some friends, and it's going to be like a quasi bachelor party.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Well, we'll definitely see you out there. We'll have to, hang out, get together, play some of all the fun stuff. All right, so the first card we're going to take a look at, this is a blue neutral card, so both heroes and villains can play it. This one is interesting. I want to hear what you guys think about it because of how powerful it is. But it costs you 3 resources. It's called Decisive Blow, and it's an event that states resolve one of your dice showing melee damage. This can also be modified dice. So then you remove all. Well, actually, that's not true. Never mind. So you resolve one of your dice showing melee damage, and then you remove all character and upgrade dice of the character you just dealt damage to. So, what are you guys' thoughts on this card?
It seems like a blowout, but it's really expensive. Like 3 resources is a lot to have to give out, but when it works and it goes off, it's really good, especially if you're using it on somebody who has a full suite of upgrades. I mean, if that's Django, you're in a good position.
Yeah, when I saw this card, I was really thinking about its impacts on the late game. When you're down 1v1 and you're able to get out, roll out first, you basically get to, cripple the other character's round for that late game, and I think it's going to be strong.
I mean, do you think that the 3 cost is a little bit too prohibitive? You're gonna see this happen, but it's not obviously gonna be as consistent. So is this gonna kind of become a better version of, say, Reversal, where A3 you have to spot a yellow character, but then you get to throw dice right in their face. Now, you resolve a melee die and you just remove dice. It's a trade-off of removing all the dice for no damage versus removing a die and dealing damage. What do you think the consistency of that is, since it's both, neutral heroes and villains take advantage of this card?
I think I definitely agree with Pearl Yeti that this is going to be more of like a late game card. I don't know if off the bat I would be like super passionate about including 2, but this is one of those cards that I really want to include in my deck just to see how often it works and how interesting it'll be when it does work. Because while it might not be very cost effective, especially in the early game, once you have all of your upgrades on your dudes and you're looking to just close out the game, those 3 resources aren't that hard to get. And you're not really losing a whole lot, especially if you've got like a Kylo 1 melee side and you're using this to completely get rid of somebody's dice. It's just it can be so devastating. I'm interested to see just how good it can be and whether that 3 resources is worth the investment.
Yeah, I've been running Kylo Dooku lately, and most people take down Kylo as the first target, which leaves me with Dooku. And as I move into the late game, Dooku has tons of upgrades, and I'm usually sitting on tons of resources, and I'm going through my entire 30 card deck. So having this in there as a one of is, it almost feels like a guaranteed of I'm gonna get this card when I need it. And I run a lot of melee in the upgrade slots, and even more with the other spoilers that are coming out. I just see this as it's gonna be a really strong card for a deck like that.
Plus, there's no downsides to it. I mean, you resolve the die, which I guess if you had to remove it and you were doing modified sides, it'd be a little bit easier. But you're still getting that damage through, and there's no real other than being cost prohibitive. There's really nothing that's kicking your game back and making you on your back foot. It's constantly putting your opponent on the edge, and they have to watch out for it because if it goes off and it gets rid of 5 dice, it's a blowout.
That's a huge power play if that were the case. So I'm excited to see it. I'm definitely going to slide it in my my deck just because of, yeah, like you said, damage and dice. For 3, you're doing you're kind of combining 2. I could definitely see this happening as a 1 of and potentially a 2 of in control decks. So we'll see. I do like the fact it is neutral. This is going to help both villains and heroes get lots of in desperate times. We'll definitely have to see how popular it is. But it is nice to see very strong removal at a really fair cost, not just gratuitous overpowered stuff. Anyways, moving on to the next card. Loose Ends is a yellow villain card. It costs resources. This is an event that says ambush, so you get a free action basically for playing it, and the effect is remove 1 of your dice showing ranged damage. You discard the top 4 cards of an opponent's deck. What do you guys think?
I kind of dig it. It's sort of, if you look at just Jyn Erso, she's got the sort of dual purpose of having the melee the range sides and the discard sides. And with this card, it sort of lets you have a discard orientated hero and a range damage orientated hero that is still using those range sides in order to push your win condition, which is essentially discarding and mill. So it's nice that you can actually get a use out of those cards, and it's a little bit expensive with 2, but with ambush it feels right. I am kind of interested in seeing how this works.
Well, do know it is villain, not neutral.
Oh right, yes.
Unfortunately, Jyn can't, but there are some villains who can take it. What do you guys? I mean, when I look at this card, I think about Jabba with, say, I don't know, you could put him with a Night Sister. You have to add a character that has ranged damage, but being able to pay 2 and just get rid of 4, that's kind of brutal because your mill decks right now target cards in hand, and being able to target cards in deck is good. I don't know if it's nearly as efficient as, say, a Jabba with Vader, since Vader always gets you that free activation card. But I mean, it might be worth getting rid of Vader to have a few more bodies on the field. I mean, would you? I guess a good question is would you run this with a Django to add a little bit of mill to, say, an aggressive range deck?
Yeah, so I mean that's something that I've been experiencing while running Kylo Dooku, is that you actually have kind of a secret second win condition. I'd say it 30% of the time you win by mill, and having a sneaky card in here in yellow villain deck that can have that second sneaky win condition, that's where I see this card coming into play. I don't know how well it slots into current mill decks, kind of with their their dice lineup. I do see it being more interesting in kind of pure damage decks, but that might run a little bit slower.
Looking at this card, I think Jabba Night Sister and then Jabba and anything in red. That sort of gives Jabba with red characters a little bit of legitimacy, I guess, depending on what other cards we start to see. But I really like the idea of changing those range damage sides into a different type of win condition and sort of pushing that and being more flexible in how you're defeating your opponent.
Right, and it's also nice because if you roll out damage, you're putting pressure on your opponent, and they traditionally remove the base damage, and if you have a modified side just sitting by itself, you don't have to resolve, like the Decisive Blow says you have to resolve, you just have to remove. So if someone pulls a removal card out of their hand and they pop off your base damage and you still have melee or range damage sides showing, but they're modified, this is still a card that can be played, and your opponent's going to have to worry about that because now your deck can deal damage and it can mill regardless of what's happening because you can drop as dice, you can mill with range damage showing, and with ambush you still have other options. You can do things, and Jabba decks traditionally make a lot of money. Resources is not extremely cost prohibitive. I'm gonna definitely put this in my mill deck. I'm excited to. My biggest thing is I'm excited to hit cards out of the deck because there's a lot of times when you have a lot of thermal detonators or cunnings or whatever, and you just get a really good roll, and you have like 7 discard sides. Well, you can't hit that out of your opponent's hand. You can only hit 4, or you can only hit 5. Usually it's 4 because they play a card before you do anything. So being able to get cards out of the deck means you hit their hand and you hit their deck. Like, you are accelerating the game fast. The best part is 2 resources for 4 cards. That's almost an entire turn. In my head, that's basically a turn because people draw 5, they play a card, and then you mill 4 out of their hand. So essentially, you just got an 1-turn advancement on the mill, and that's really scary considering like turn 1 you could potentially mill 9 cards out of their deck. That's almost a third of the deck, which means if you got 2 of these off in 2 turns, the game is only going to go potentially 4 turns before the game's over. So I like it a lot.
Right, yeah, it's exciting to see mill accelerated because right now we're sort of at this point where it's 5 cards only, and if nothing goes your way, you have a turn clock, but essentially, especially with the very aggro-orientated meta that we have right now, that turn clock is very, very long for that mill win condition.
Yeah, surprisingly, 5 turns is actually like an eternity because traditionally half of your team is gone by turn. So being able to become aggressive, and the fact that you have access to range damage, if you don't need to mill, you can just start killing characters. I think it's great because that gives them access to a lot of threat potential and speed, which they definitely need right now.
Yeah, I think most importantly, Chad has pointed out the art on these 2 cards is just gorgeous.
Oh yeah, the artwork for all of these cards has been really, really beautiful. Obviously, as a Knight of Ren, Kylo on cards, especially when he's about to cut that poor soul into bits. It's always fun to watch that. All right, let's move on to the next 2 cards we have to talk about. So the first one, this is not news, but it's been, people have talked about it, people have discussed it. This is Force Speed. This is a neutral legendary card for blue. This costs you 0 resources. It's an upgrade ability that targets a blue character only. You get 1 focus, 1 shield, 3 special. So 1 special, 1 special, 1 special, and a blank. And the special effect is take up to 2 additional actions. I have a lot of thoughts on this. People, right now are saying, this is broken, this is unfair. If you put it on Rey, it's not going to be fun. I disagree. We had the same discussion with Sith Holocron. People said the same thing. It's broken, it's busted. The game is going to become 100% Sith Holocrons. Sith Holocron's going to just dominate the meta. And, as we've seen, that's not actually the case. It is in blue decks for villain, but it isn't the dominating only card you're going to see. And actually see more ranged aggressive decks over blue control Sith Holocron decks. You guys think this is going to be the same problem? Will it be worse? Will it be better? Like, what are your thoughts on the card?
My initial reaction is, oh my goodness, this is so good. And I desperately wish it was heroes only so that it would sort of balance out the scales with villains Holocron. But my initial reaction is that this is just, it looks so fun to play. And I think this is one of the cards in the new set that's going to really speed up the pace of the game. and really represents, like, I don't think I've had a expansion or a second set with a trading card game or a collectible card game that has mixed things up as much as Spirit of Rebellion has, and this card really emphasizes that. And I think it might be better than Sith Holocron in a vacuum, just because it's so good early game and so good late game.
I definitely like it more than Sith Holocron, and that just might be Sith Holocron fatigue after 3 months of seeing it played. But that one extra special side, 50% chance of hitting that 2 additional actions, that's slightly better than Sith Holocron's 2 chance to hit that drop out any card in your hand, and you have to have that card in your hand. I don't know how many times I've drawn a Sith Holocron and a lightsaber and just been so disappointed. 4 speed's going to be great just by itself.
Yeah, and I have to agree with what Lassie was saying. Definitely, design aspect of Destiny is totally different than any card game I played. Because traditionally, you'll see like, hey, here's this set. If you talk about like Magic, Pokemon, here's a set. It does a thing, and then the next set does something kind of to add to that, but not necessarily shake the game up. So it's like, if you start with like, hey, this first set is all about big monsters, then the second set is about making those monsters bigger. Spirit of Rebellion is like, forget that. We're just going to throw in lots of cards that shift things up, because now we're seeing fast cards, we're seeing different themed decks like we just talked about. Mill decks now are not only, they were viable before, but now they're aggressive, and now they have options in going to use ranged damage in the deck. So we can see multiple types of mill builds, where right now it's just Jabba and a Vader. That's really efficient. Force speed is both hero and villain applicable, so you can play it in whatever deck you want if you're running blue, and I think it's just great. I do know that there's ways to stop the card. It's not broken. You can play Confiscation from your hand. It says, for it's 0 cost card that says target an upgrade your opponent has, pay the cost of that upgrade to bounce that card back to their hand. You can play Confiscation for 0, pay 0, and throw the Force speed back into your opponent's hand. And you should especially do that after they roll Force speed, so they have the dice on the field, because at this point, you've used it as a 0 cost removal. You didn't have to lose resources, you didn't have to lose dice, and if your opponent plays it again, they can't roll it again, because they'd have to put it on a different character that hasn't been. So there are ways to turn this off. It's not impossible to be stopped. I do think this is going to be an important combo piece in a lot of decks. Obviously, Rey is a very, very obvious target, because you play it for 0, she gets a free action, and you keep on moving. But another thing to consider is, if you're filling up your field with Force speed, that also means it's eating up one of your 3 slots, and so you don't get to have 3 pieces of equipment anymore. You can have 1 Force speed, which deals no damage, and 2 other things. So your damage burst ratio does decrease. I mean, do you think that might affect the meta, where, sure, we see Force speed and action economy, but we don't see these giant swings for like 8 to 10, 11 damage. Now we might see a range of like 5 to 7. Does that, what do you guys think?
I think the damage and the speed is really going to come into play with the characters that just have big dice on them already. So, Force speed with Vader or Force speed with Luke. You're doing things faster, you're hitting hard without necessarily needing those upgrades. And with a 0 cost on Force speed, now you've saved resources to play more control in the round. So you're playing faster, you're still hitting hard with those big dice, and you're controlling the pace of the game, since you've got the resources to do that. That's where this card really starts to get scary in my mind.
I think it gives blue the capacity to really push for a more aggressive battlefield. So rather than going with like Mos Eisley, you with Force speed, since you're getting so many actions out and you're getting so much action economy, you have a better opportunity to take advantage of a battlefield that you're bringing, or even that your opponent's bringing. So I think it'll be interesting to see if that there's a balance between, does force speed actually give you too many actions? Like, are you taking all your actions and giving your opponent like complete reign over the round, or is it just enough where you're going to be just far enough ahead of your opponent that you're claiming the battlefield and you're constantly going first on subsequent turns?
Right. Chud in the chat was saying something I definitely thought was interesting. Force speed looked really strong when it was first announced, but now that we've seen more of the cards from the set, we've seen that half the set is speeding up the tempo of the game. So this doesn't seem as crazy as before. And I have to agree. When we saw this, there was pretty much a vacuum of, I think, 10 cards spoiled. And of course, Force speed just looked like a god card. It was insane. It was broken. It was, how do you do anything about this? Now we've seen a lot of other cards that, remove things. They turn off entire turns. They do all kinds of stuff. And Spirit of the Rebellion definitely seems to be giving players acceleration of things they want to do. So I don't think force speed is out of control as some people are afraid it could be. But it is powerful. Like, don't get me wrong. If you see a force speed, you're going to need to know how to play around it and how to remove that from the field as efficiently and as quickly as possible so your opponent doesn't just burst ahead of you in action. All right, so moving along, we're going to take a look at this card. Is interesting. It's the Astromech. It is a neutral red card, so both, once again, heroes and villains can play it. This will cost you 2 resources. It is a support droid. It has a 1 focus, 2 focus, 1 shield, 1 resource, and a blank and a blank. And the action for this card is remove this die to turn a vehicle. Remove this die to turn a vehicle die to any side, and that's not just yours. That's any. So you can essentially use this as removal, or, well, you can blank out your opponent's vehicle side, or you can use it to turn your vehicle to sides you definitely want to see. Is this a card that you think is going to see play?
This is kind of one of those cards that I feel like you see in a list of spoilers, and you're like, okay, and you scroll past it. And that's kind of brutal, but like it emphasizes all the issues with supports right now. They're super slow. They're a little bit overcosted. There's too many blanks on this die. The 2 focus side is good, obviously. But even the action, which essentially, as long as you have the die out, and even if it's blank, you get to do something with it, it's not that exciting. Like, it assumes that your opponent is running vehicles, or assumes that you have another vehicle out, a vehicle support that you've paid for and you've paid the action for to get out onto the battlefield. And even then, if you're trying to blank your opponent's vehicles, most of the good vehicles that are high costed that people are going to want to play don't actually have blank sides.
So I think this is a really great card to have sitting right next to force speed. Given the, I think, 6-month time from sending the cards to the printers to when they get out, these cards were developed before, the super fast, super aggressive meta emerged. Back in, December, January, early on, before the rise of, Django Veers and friends, people played supports. They were fun to get out. It was fun to have Black Ones and Millennium Falcons and ATSTs, and product was scarce, so maybe that was the only legendary that you opened up and you wanted to play with it. But now supports don't see play because they are too slow, and they're getting even slower with cards like Force Speed coming out, ramping up the speed of the game. So hopefully I'll eat those words and we'll see some just amazing events that really speed up supports, because I would like to see them in the game more.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. The card itself is well designed, but the problem is it's kind of in a place. It's being released in a set where supports aren't dominating. They're not really viable either. I do think there is potential for Astromech to be very powerful when we get to a meta where we see vehicles and supports becoming more dominant, because then you're going to be able to use it for not only the focus, but to be able to manipulate your dice to whatever. I don't necessarily think it's going to be that great this set. However, we do know there are a lot of vehicles coming. So, it's hard because it is 2 resources for a die. That's not bad. That's not ever really bad. But, I did put these together purposely because when you're comparing it to a zero cost card that gives you 2 actions, rough, really rough. But I do think Astromech does have some staying power, and we could potentially see it in some very interesting um, vehicle lists. So we'll definitely have to wait and see what happens with that. But yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this looks interesting. Oh, this is way too slow. So
What playing devil's advocate, would you be interested or excited to play Astromech if it was a zero cost support?
oh my gosh, yes, that would be so good. You just play it like every game for no reason because you don't lose anything.
What about if it was one cost?
Yeah, I'd play for one.
Okay, that's interesting. I still, I don't know. I feel like Destiny really needs events that are actually going to make supports faster or more consistent. But as it stands, they're like, it's another action to roll a single die, and it's so hard to justify that nowadays.
That's true, but it's harder to be targeted for removal because it's not a character and it's not on a character. So if you're sitting on like a two focus, isolation doesn't. You have to use something like a flank, or you have to use something like, say, electroshock, because like we just saw the one with Kylo, it only pulls dice off of characters you strike, or like if you have like force choke, you can't target the astromech. It's not. I agree. It's too slow, but it's also almost untargetable. There are some things that get rid of it, so it's fairly safe on the field, and that forces your opponent to get rid of that with the hard removal as opposed to like soft character removal.
Yeah, and I think everything changes with these guys once we see a squad tactics for supports. Something along those lines.
Yeah, that would be really crazy. But you guys are right. As it is slow. I wouldn't say unplayable, but not super great. Not at the point we're about to go into, because we've already got a fast meta, and these cards are going to make the meta faster than it is by leaps and bounds. So anything that's not in that speed range is kind of just automatically too slow. So moving along, the next card, speaking of fast, this one is something that people are also afraid of because of Django. So this is Fast Hands. This is a zero cost neutral yellow card. So once again, villains and heroes can play this card. This is an upgrade ability, so you can play it on your character, but it does eat up one of your slots. And the card states, after you have activated this character, you may resolve one of its character or upgrade dice. Obviously, the first target everyone thinks about, Django. What do you guys think about, Fast Hands? It's an uncommon, so, this is not a rare. You don't have to try and find the die for this card. It's probably going to be in your booster box. You're going to get, a couple copies of it, so it's not going to be impossible to find, but I definitely think we're going to see this in a lot of decks.
I really dig this card. Again, I sort of wish it was like Heroes, like shoot first or something like that. It was a Han orientated card and it was Heroes only, because I really think Heroes needs a little bit of help. But I like this card. It's very interesting. I think it's more balanced than people expect it to be because you're only resolving one of the character upgrade dice. And so when you're looking at characters that are, range orientated, there's always lots of modified sides. And so if you get a poor roll, you can't really actually resolve any of your dice. And I also think that this is going to be more interesting for not necessarily damage orientated builds, but things that are using special sides. I think this works really well with splashing with blue, like doing yellow blue, more so than it does with like big guns and doing damage. I think it's interesting. I think it's potentially scary, and I'm very much looking forward to playing with it. But I don't think it's as like overpowered as people think it is. It's very good though.
Yeah, last night we had a Java player that was really excited about this card, going on Java with Java's free reroll after activation to find a side on one of his dice that can can really disrupt the next turn. Disrupt being a good side to find on, if I get to go first as Jabba and I can, have an extra chance to blank out your resources for your turn, that's a strong play.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the card, and I agree. I don't think it's as crazy as people have said. I do like yucking it up to get people's thoughts and discussion, because most people will say, "Oh no, you're crazy. It's not that broken." Okay, why? And it's interesting because it does do a lot of things that you guys have said. Even Game Slayer in the chat was saying the same thing about Django fast hands. If he's got modified sides, you can't resolve them. Game Slayer was saying, with fast hands and Django, if he resolves his dice, that means his dice aren't around to activate modifiers like jetpacks. So hey, if you pop off that 1 or 2 damage on Django, but you have a +3 modifier, like, that's not actually helpful. And that's a really, really fair statement. I'm actually really excited about this in Jabba, like you said, because there's so many times where you really want to roll and resolve that discard or that disrupt because your opponent is sitting on a card they want to play, or your opponent just made enough money to play something that's going to hurt you. And so being able to roll, and then with Jabba, if need be, re-roll and then pop one of those dice off is absolutely scary, especially early game, because now you're going to be able to hit those resources faster than your opponent. Also, I really like this card in combination with Maz, because you can roll her and then you get to resolve 3 of your dice, because you get to use fast hands and then you get to use her effect to pop 3 dice. So it's a great combo piece for a lot of things. Also, it doesn't have any restriction. You don't have to put it on a yellow character, spot a yellow character. All you have to do is have a yellow character in your deck, and you can just play this on whoever you want. So like, hey, you can put this on your Kylo Ren, and if you get a special, hey, I'm gonna look at your hand, or I'm gonna pull a card out of your hand and deal some damage. Or all these characters that have different things. Like you can like wombo combo really easily, and it's not a heavy restriction.
Yeah, I mean, like I play a lot of Vader Raider, and obviously Raider has that ability, discard a card after you activate to resolve one of your dice. And when you have a Raider with like Force Throw on it because of Holocron or Mind Probe or something like that, like it's so fast and it can do so much. And this card, I want it on Dooku all day, because you roll out a Force Throw or that Mind Probe or really any blue ability, and you get to resolve it immediately. I mean, imagine somebody rolling out their Vader, getting one of those 3 melee sides, and then rolling out your Dooku with his Force Throw and just being like, all right, that's going to your face, have fun.
So my one complaint about this card, and it kind of goes along with what Wirebrain's saying in the chat, I almost wished it cost 1, just so that it could be overwritten later in the game with something better. The 0 cost upgrades like this, you don't actually know if you want to take those into the late game. It could be great in the late game to take somebody out before they can get their turn in, or it could just really hold you back and damage potential, especially when you're down to just 1 character on the board that potentially has 1 less dice that they're rolling out.
That's a great statement. I really, really look at this card when I first saw it and just thought about how many fun things you can do with it. I don't actually think it's broken or overpowered. I just think it's really fun because you run a yellow character, you put a couple of these in your deck, and then you just put it on, hey, here's a Stormtrooper with fast hands. Hey, here's Jabba with fast hands. Hey, here's, whatever you want. Get Chewbacca, he's got fast hands. Like, it's just kind of fun because it's not a restrictive card. It gives you quick access to do fun things. And I feel like the design of a lot of these cards, like the first set was built as a core set. Like there's definitely certain archetypes and themes and decks that are going to be successful because there's only so many cards. When we get Spirit of Rebellion, we're getting double the size of the card pool, but a lot of these cards seem to really take into consideration, like, hey, not only can you build powerful decks, but you can give them some really strong shenanigans that make them not only viable but scary, but you also can't commit to that forever. Like, you can't sit on a fast hands for the whole game if you need to do damage to like you're gonna have to override it. So like you have to mitigate, like early game, resolve your dice really quick, and then put some big guns on your guy, and then resolve them the old-fashioned way. But it's interesting. Now you have a lot of freedom to design your deck to not only be a specific type of game-winning condition, but you can kind of cheat a little bit in like early game, resolve some things faster, and then slowly progress into becoming, you know, win condition.
I do think the one spot where this is going to find its way to the late game is, you know, any character you can get it on with big dice. You know, I liked your Chewy Growl. I think he's going to love fast hands all the way through the game. You know, hitting his big 4 damage side.
Yeah, 4 for 1 on Bowcaster.
It's going to be great. You know, getting around the control and the removal with fast hands with those big dice it's going to win games.
Game Slayer was saying do a 1 dice Palp with a 1 dice Balatique. I mean, you know, that's the whole thing I'm saying. Like, this card brings into consideration like unique, very peculiar deck lists because you can put it onto characters that, I mean, the Emperor doesn't need fast hands, but if you give him fast hands, it's just going to be great because you roll it, you resolve it, you deal his damage from his effect, you do whatever his dice say, and now it's like, oh, you can't remove his dice, and crap. You know, if you're trying to sit on a control deck, fast hands is a really strong way to kind of circumvent getting your dice removed that you really need to go off. All right, so let's move along to Arms Deal. This one's kind of weird. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on it. So this is a villain-only yellow card. 0 cost card event that states discard any number of weapons from your hand, then gain 1 resource for each card you just discarded. What do you guys think?
I kind of dig it. It's not overpowered. It's not, you know, incredible under any circumstances, but it's a nice card to help when you're playing these sort of upgrade orientated decks where you have tons of weapons that you want to put on your guys and you just get a very poor draw, or you know, you have to commit your resources to removal and mitigation rather than equipping things. And like I said, I don't think it's incredible, but I think it's actually pretty interesting. I'm actually intrigued to give it a try.
The chat is helping me feed me lines, so this goes great with IG-88. His special is you can play a weapon from your discard pile onto him at a discount, and I'm struggling to find how much the discount is. I think it's 2.
It's 2 or less. He's actually on our next page of this.
Okay, so I mean, this card goes great with him because now you've given yourself, you know, 3 resources using Arms Deal. You know, potentially getting out a much bigger weapon out earlier with a IG-88.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is obviously a combo piece for IG-88 because not only you're doing 2 things. You're creating a card in your hand. So say it's a weapon. Say for some example, it's like a Bowcaster. Can't put a Bowcaster with IG-88, but for this sake of this example, you know, it's a weapon. It costs you 4 resources. So you pitch it, you get 1 resource, and then if you get IG-88 special, you can equip it for 2. It's already basically paid for half of itself. So you're getting resources you need to do things, getting card economy you need to do things. I actually saw this, and since I think about everything in a mill fashion, because that's probably the only deck I'm actually going to ever play competitively because it's so much fun. This is a great answer to hand disruption, because if you're sitting on a bunch of cards you want to play and your opponent say it's a Jabba and they roll out all those discard sides, you're just like, you're going to lose your whole hand. This is a great way to pop those cards out of your hand and turn them into resources. And then if you have ways to get them back onto your character, say with IG-88 for example, now your opponent who rolled out all those discard sides, say, you know, if you're lucky enough to play this and mill out your whole hand for 4 resources, those are dead sides, so your opponent is now going to have to either allocate their focus or their card economy to reroll those dice to actually get something out of them. So it's interesting that this can be used as a combo piece with certain characters, but it can also be used as a denial card if you're in a bad situation where you're going to lose cards out of your hand. You can actually get something out of it before your opponent snipes those cards.
Yeah, when I read this card, it killed me a little bit because I've enjoyed doing mixed hero red and yellow decks together, and if I could combo this with rearm, it'd be so much fun. Resources for days, but unfortunately they decided to stick it with just villain.
I think it's a good call though, because if you could play rearm with this, it would be bonkers being able to just throw cards into your graveyard, reanimate them. You lost the card, you made money, and you basically turn your graveyard into a second deck, because with rearm, you're just going through stuff and putting whatever you need onto your characters. And it's so good because you essentially have access to a deck for draw mechanics and a graveyard for fetch, which is really silly.
It just makes it feel a little bit less severe when you get that high cost card in your first couple of rounds that you just can't afford to put on your guys, and it gives you the opportunity to next turn actually have the opportunity to play those cards with the resources. And I guess my only issue is that it's sort of by default has to get rid of 2 cards from your hand. Obviously that's sort of rough if your opponent's trying to mill you out. And on top of that, that also gets rid of 2 cards for rerolls. And if you're playing an upgrade, you're discarding an upgrade with Arms Deal, you're down to 2 cards for rerolls. And it's sort of, I can see it getting clunky just because it's getting rid of your ability to do things with your dice rather than the stuff that's in your hand.
Right. I feel like this is going to be a very neat card. Like, you're going to see specific decks that run Arms Deal, and then that's it. You're not going to see it splashed into, for example, I would probably never run this with like Balatik and Friends or Django and Friends, just because like all your guns are so inexpensive. You don't really need to pitch them for resources, and you're more than likely going to play them anyways, as opposed to try and use them as recycle fodder for some kind of shenanigan trick. All right, so let's take a look at the next page of cards. All right, I won't lie. I think Blackmail is probably one of my more favorite announcements. Obviously, because I am a mill player, and this is just... I won't lie. I think thermal detonators just became pretty worthless after this card, but we'll talk about it because it does have a huge potential downside. So Blackmail costs you 3 resources. It is a villain-only yellow card, legendary status, so it's not going to be super easy to find, but when you do, all right, so it has a 2 discard side, 3 discard side, 2 disrupt, 3 disrupt, 3 shields, a blank. It is an upgrade, and it does have a stipulation on the text effect that says, after you roll this die, any opponent may give you 1 resource to remove this die. What are your thoughts on Blackmail?
Go ahead.
I wish I ran mill. I know we're going to see this card out there a lot, and one of the decks I run, the hero red deck, I struggle to have resources during the mid game. They're usually getting paid to, or used to pay for events to keep the speed of the deck going, and forcing me to pay this resource is just going to be painful. It's also a deck where there aren't any cards in my hand that I want you to get rid of. And this is just a terrifying card for that deck. Kylo Dooku, I'm not as afraid of it so much, mostly because I think people that are running this, they're not going to be doing damage. They're going to be doing mill. So I'm not going to be really worried about discarding with Dooku to keep him from dying. And probably a better chance to pay to remove this die, but this is a scary card.
My initial reaction is that I'm curious. It looks really good on paper. Like, this card looks incredible. But in practice, I'm not sure how good it actually is. 3 resources is pretty cost prohibitive. The dice sides are obviously really, really good, but that stipulation that your opponent can just give you a resource and the die is removed, I mean, one cost removal is pretty good. And I think Game Slayer said it in the chat, but it's important to note that after you roll this die, is the stipulation, not after you activate the character that this upgrade is attached to. So if you re-roll this at all and your opponent gets new resources, or they're more concerned about the die side that you rolled, it can really get dicey for you. And of course, you know, that 2 resource swing is really nice. Your opponent loses a resource and you gain a resource. But I don't know. It looks really cool, but I feel like my opponent's just going to hand me the resource and move on with his turn.
I really like this card a lot for just infinite amounts of reasons. For because you have discard, disrupt, tons and tons of numbers. You're also actually outside of electroshock range on half of the die sides. The 3 discard, 3 disrupt, and 3 shields are no joke. That's a big thing because electroshock is such a great removal card. I like it a lot, but it is nice to see dice that have numbers it can't hit, because I think we did the math and it was like 93% of the cards in Awakenings electroshock can remove, just flat out gone. And that's an astronomical amount of removal. Another thing to consider, if you have the battlefield, you have Blackmail, and you have fast hands, shouldn't you be allowed, and because since both of these trigger after you roll the die, you should be allowed to actually use fast hands before your opponent can pay you the 1 resource to get rid of that die, wouldn't you think?
Yep, as long as you have the battlefield. But that obviously gets a little bit dicey if your opponent has the battlefield.
So the rules text states that as the queue gets filled up with like those after before events, that the battlefield controller gets to decide which order they go in. Which I don't think many people are quite there yet with the rules. Back to the card though, like I really like Local Garrison. I just wish I played Villain Red a little bit more, and I see this as just a more effective Local Garrison. It's got the same cost. At worst, it's a Local Garrison, and at best, you're hitting those really strong dice sides.
Right. And don't forget, there's a bunch of cards now in Spirit of Rebellion that actually care about the numbers on your die. We're going to get to one of them, but as we saw with Plant Explosives, you know, if you've got 7 or more on your... Oh, no, I'm sorry. If you've got 10 or more on your die faces, you can just play that for 0 and deal 10 damage. So it's not only a card that's, you know, I think it's fairly costed. If this was 2, it'd be way too good, and 4 would be way too expensive. You know, the effect is fair because, you know, your opponent now has to worry about, cool, all right, say I'm playing this with Jabba and I roll out a 3 discard. Got 3 cards in your hand. Well, do you pay me a money and get rid of that card, keep your cards, but now you don't have enough money to play the cards from your hand? Do you let me eat the cards from your hand? Like, it puts a lot of pressure on the opponent in mill. Outside of that, you're probably right. I don't foresee this a lot of play, but this is like definitely a replacement for thermal detonators for me. I probably won't run thermal, maybe 1, but I don't use it for the damage. So it's just, for mill players, it's great, and with fast hands, it's super great. Outside of that, I'm not entirely sure it's gonna go anywhere.
I love the flavor of the card though. The text the effect is really cool. It's sort of the blackmail, you know. Either I'm gonna do some bad stuff to you or you're gonna pay me. And the art's really cool. And I just wanna, you know, hats off to Fantasy Flight for designing a really cool card and putting some art on it that's really inspiring.
So let's take a look at Bait and Switch. This is another card. I mean, mill decks are going to love this because we make so much money. But it's just great for villains, period. So this is a common. It costs you 0. It's an event. It has ambush, which means you can take 1 additional action after playing the card. So it doesn't eat up resources. You just lose a card from your hand. And the effect is turn 1 of your dice showing a resource to any side. And that's modified and non-modified dice. So it's basically focus on a stick.
Yeah, this is an amazing card. How many times do you roll out and you get money and a bunch of modified sides? this is going to fix that situation, and you get to resolve it before your opponent can do anything about it. I see this card being basically auto-include from now on with a lot of yellow villain decks. It's just solid.
Essentially, Crime Lord just got a third special side, right? Like with this card, it's so good. Being able to switch your dice this quickly is such an incredible boon for decks like this that really want to resolve their dice immediately. I think it is actually a little bit clunky though. It's sort of, if you're not rolling resources, I mean, it's very awkward, and most dice only have one resource side. I'm interested to see how this works in practice. I'm a little bit apprehensive about having it to be a resource side, but I don't know.
It's interesting because if you play any traditional card game, like for example Magic, I mean everything is based around Magic, let's be honest, but in Magic you have a resource system where you have lands that produce mana that you pay to play cards from your hand. And so in order to manifest more efficient decks, they have, fetch cards, filter cards, and things that are able to get you the mana you need in the quantity you need it. Since this game doesn't have a mana system, it has a dice system. Everything is built around getting those dice to be what you need. So I think it's interesting. Like in my head, this is like a filter card, because essentially with bait and switch in your hand, when you're looking at your die sides, you've got your card and it tells you all the faces. You can essentially have this card in your hand and know that you have, 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage, focus, and then shield or whatever, and then you have a resource. That resource is now anything else you want it to be. And so it filters your dice into what you at the speed you need it. Because if this didn't have ambush, it would be terrible, because being able to switch a die to a side you need, not resolve it, means your opponent can go, cool, remove that, and you just wasted your turn, basically giving your opponent free knowledge. Now you can just throw this card on the field, turn your die to a side, and resolve it without the opponent stopping you. That's huge. I mean, like you said, you can turn a Crime Lord into a third special side. There's a lot of dice that now become, imagine Datapad. I mean, that thing is basically 3 specials. If you've got something else that's running multiple resource sides, you can cool, here's damage. Django, who was, I think it was Game Slayer, Django's resource side, cool, that's damage now. So what does that make him? That makes him a 4 damage side character. I mean, it's really, really nasty. I like this card a lot because it gives you the flexibility to get to the die faces you need desperately. And once again, because of ambush, you can play this, flip a die to a side you want it to be. It doesn't have to be damage, and then you can resolve cards that reflect numbers. And we're going to get to friends in high places here in a second, but to resolve friends in high places, you need 7 on the numbers of your dice showing. So you can use this to combo into that to trigger, other shenanigans that people might not be expecting, because they're thinking, oh, it's going to be damage. No, flip it to like a 3 disrupt, and then play a card that resolves off of 7 sides showing, 10 sides showing, all these things, and just, it's a combo piece, and it's really fast, which is great.
Yeah, and I think this card was made with some of the other Spirit of Rebellion characters in mind. I think 2 of the new yellow characters have 2 resource sides on them, so you've got a decent chance to have that resource side showing, when you don't need it, or when you need this card to do something magical.
Yeah, Andrew Larcher said something in the chat that I really agree with. Coming straight from hand, it's hard to predict when it's going to be played. Your opponent might make a mistake and remove a resource side when you don't have the card. This is something I've been talking about a lot on the Knights of Ren podcast. Right now, with just the base set of Awakenings, there's a fixed amount of cards with a fixed amount of dice with a fixed amount of... So once you've seen the whole set, once you've played up a bajillion games, you can look at a die, look at the removal in your hand, and make a very accurate assessment of what the die can do, what the maximum damage output could be in the best possible scenario for your opponent, and make very educated guesses on where to play removal in your best interest. With a lot of these cards having not only ambush but from hand effects, that throws a lot of that out of the window, because now all of that math you now have to add bait and switch into the mixture, because hey, they have a Vader. I believe he has a resource side, does he not?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have a Vader, and you're sitting on an electroshock. Do you remove the resource in fear of getting hit for 3 that you can't remove and can't stop anyways? Do you really want to remove that use that electroshock on a resource when your opponent is showing like a 2 discard from Dooku? Now it's a little bit difficult. Like, control players have to work for it, whereas it's a lot easier now. I'm not saying it's super easy in the first place. It does throw a lot of curveballs into the control game, because you have to be aware of a lot of effects coming from hand that you can't know about, you have to assume will happen, and you might have to make suboptimal removal plays, because it's more dangerous for bait and switch to turn a resource side to something that can be much more devastating.
I think that's a really interesting observation, actually, because if you look at it, it's almost more of a late game card, because at that point, when you roll a resource side on Vader, you're kind of like, oh, I don't have any more upgrades to play. I'm not looking for resources, and that puts your opponent on the back foot, especially if you haven't played both of your bait and switches. And I think one of the very interesting things about this card is that, unlike something like Force Strike, it has ambush rather than saying turn one of your dice to any side and then resolve it. So it works with modified sides, essentially. I can flip one of my ranged dice to a black side to activate all of my weapons modified sides. It can get really bursty, and I see what you mean about filtering your dice. Like with the Crime Lord having an additional special side, essentially, it sort of gives Vader another 3 damage side. And I definitely see your perspective now. Like, it can get really, really nuts with how this card works.
Yeah, the other fun combo with this is bait and switch followed up with an all-in. You've just fixed something into maybe a solid focus. And you've used 1 resource now, and you're gonna swing for what you want to swing for.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, like, I play control. I'm a control player since Magic. Like, that's all I ever play. So I love the mind games control brings. And I know not everyone's gonna see the game in this perspective, but just the existence of this card, if you come against a yellow villain deck, like, as a control player, I immediately have to fear and assume you're running at least one of these. You might not have any in your deck, but if I see you roll out a bunch of resources and like a modified, like say for example, you're running Jango Fett, and you've got a +3 modified side on Jetpack and Django sitting on a resource, I really have to make the consideration that you have a bait and switch in your hand. You could pop me for 5 damage before I can do anything about it. And as a smart player, I'm gonna have to make the forced choice to get rid of that resource, because if one of my characters is in striking damage of 5 damage, if he's only got 5 or less health, I have to stop that, because I can't take the chance that you have the alternative to kill right now before I can do anything. And that's just exceedingly frustrating, because I mean, like, if you don't do it and your opponent plays bait and switch, like, in the back of your head, you're like, I misplayed and I knew better. And that's just crazy that the existence of this card can pose a serious threat to control players. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, this is not like a god card, this is not incredible, amazing, broken, insane, but like the mind games of considering like what's in the deck, what can they do with these die faces is unique, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, whenever your opponent has a resource up and you don't get rid of it, and they flip it to a damage side and just hit you for a whole bunch, you're not really going to be happy with yourself. And I think a lot of people are going to get in that situation. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really wish this was a neutral card.
Yeah, I agree. Having this in Hero would be so good. But I do like the fact it's a common, so this is not only going to be easy to get into your hand, but man, it's going to see a lot of play, I think. A yellow villain, there's not a really good reason why you shouldn't run at least, especially in like a control deck or a heavy aggro deck even. Run 2. It's a 0-cost ambush. I mean, like, you're not losing out anywhere. There's no bad thing to this card. And worst comes to worst, if you can't use it, it's a reroll. I mean, super, super, super viable. I love it.
It's basically everything Unpredictable wishes it was.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. That's exactly what Unpredictable is trying to be. I agree. However, though, Unpredictable does give you access to mess around with your opponent's dice, where this doesn't. I mean, they both have a place, but yeah, I agree. If this was in the first set and Unpredictable was in Spirit of Rebellion, I think Bait and Switch would have made a much bigger impact than Unpredictable ever did. All right, moving along. Here's another card we're going to talk about later. Friends and I Places. I'm excited about this. But the Guavian Enforcer. This is a villain character. This is not a named character, so you can run as many of these as you want if you have the point allocation for it. This guy costs you 8 points. You get 9 health, already a great deal. And then you have 1 range damage, 2 range damage, plus 1 range damage, plus 1 resource, plus 1 resource, a blank. And the action for this character is remove this die to remove 1 shield from a character. What are you guys' thoughts on the Guavian Death Squad Enforcer?
My initial reaction is that I don't like him. I look at him and I look at Balatik and I'm wondering why I'm not running a Balatik. I guess being in a situation where your 3 modified sides and your blank side can essentially be a 1 damage side, a very, very slow 1 damage side, it seems okay. I don't know. Maybe Spirit of Rebellion has some stuff that I haven't seen that will make a non-unique character a little bit better in this particular situation. But I look at him and I look at Balatik and I think, why not Balatik?
Why not the Zoidberg?
So I try to come up with a reason for the existence of this card, and all I've got is in the Fantasy Flight Games cafeteria, somebody was just owning day after day with Qui-Gon, and they were like, we've got to put a stop to this. And so here we have the Guavian Enforcer.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
I think this card kind of represents, like, going off of that, like, there was definitely R&D definitely made this set before we saw a lot of the things that Awakenings was doing, and I think this card definitely represents that. It removes shields, which sort of aren't a big deal unless you're playing against Qui-Gon. It's got a lot of modified sides, which are obviously super awkward, and it clearly doesn't do anything that makes Balatik shake in his boots.
Yeah, and the really confusing thing is, Villain doesn't struggle to remove shields right now. They're really good at it. Throwing in one more thing here that isn't actually that good at removing shields, but that's its stick. It's just kind of confusing.
I'm really annoyed because Qui-Gon was the first hero I actually wanted to build a deck around. I had a conversation with friends in my local meta about this. And every time I see cards that make Qui-Gon better, I see like 4 cards that are just hard counters to him. Because what was that card we saw with Luke holding? He has like the blast shield down with a lightsaber, and it's like it's a support that you can tap whenever you roll a shield. You can remove a die. I'm like, awesome. And then we see what was it? The Ewok Forest or whatever battlefield where it's like just remove all shields from a character. I'm like, what? No, Qui-Gon.
Yeah, it feels like Spirit of Rebellion is making Qui-Gon even worse. And the initial reaction was like, oh, Qui-Gon's going to be so good in this set. I'm so excited. Blue Heroes is going to be amazing. And
Rage.
Like,
Intimidate.
Everybody is getting rid of shields. And there's lots of shield hate.
Yeah, I'm so sad because I just want Qui-Gon to work, and no, diplomatic immunity does not do anything. I've tried. The only thing I agree. Guavian Enforcer feels like here's like a really generic character that does generic things generically. Like there's not really a special anything. Like he's not great. He's not bad. He doesn't do anything, but what he does well. The biggest thing I see is 8 points for 9 health. He's undercosted in terms of points for health. A lot of characters are like a 1-to-1 ratio. He is underneath that, so You can slot him in with a couple funky teams. You know, it gives you access to 4 character die decks. You know, technical in the chat is saying the same 4 characters. I actually like swarms a lot. I've been trying to get swarm troopers to work. It just doesn't. Here's another alternative. Like you could run 3. No, you couldn't run 3 swarm troopers. I mean, I guess you could. You could run 3 stormtroopers and a Guavian enforcer. It's not great. It's not bad. I mean, I feel like there's something in him that we might get a little bit more understanding about when the set is released, and potentially when set 3 comes out. Actually, he might be a C character.
I think what we're probably missing is a support that, or something along those lines, that says whenever you remove a shield from a character, not deal damage, remove a shield, something happens. You know, if that comes out and you can combo off of him, you know, that might be an interesting deck to construct, but we don't have that card yet, so he's just kind of confusing.
I don't think the shield removal is necessarily bad. It's just I don't think I'd want to. I wish his die got rid of 2, because I would not want to get rid of so many free damage and free resource sides for 1 shield. I mean, it's almost the same. Like in my head, when I look at his die, it's like I could just shoot you instead. Like if I'm sitting on a 1 range damage side, and then I spend it to shoot you, I get rid of a shield, or I can also remove this die to get rid of a shield. I mean, I guess, you know, it does turn his modified sides and blank sides into a thing, which is nice, but I'm not entirely sure. I agree. It's probably a combo piece with, you know, shield, 1 or more shields to a thing. And hey, Guavian Enforcer, he's a good guy. All right, let's take a look at a card I am super excited about because I'm going to be playing this probably as a one-of with Jabba. So this is Friends in High Places, 0 cost, villain only event. Play only if you have 7, or if you have dice showing a combined value of 7 or more. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may play one of those cards for free. Discard the cards you don't play. This is exactly how I'm going to play Blackmail for free. Hopefully. Probably not, but we'll see. It's so good. Like, if you have a Blackmail out on your character already and they didn't remove it, you've got lots of 3 sides. You know, running an Elite Jabba, he's got lots of 2 sides. If you're running Jabba with Vader, he's got a 3 side. Like, you can hit Friends with High Places on turn 1 if you get super lucky. Get that 3-drop damage on Vader and 2 sides on Jabba turn 1. Cool. Friends in High Places, get something out turn 1 for free. You do kind of self-mill, and if you don't hit anything that's playable, you know, you're kind of screwed. But you can play whatever card you filter into for free. So if it's an event, if it's an upgrade, if it's an equipment, you know, you get basically one of those 3 cards you get to play for free. So unless you hit 3 removal cards that don't actually have a trigger, you get something out of this. What do you guys think?
Go ahead.
Nah, you first.
I don't think 7, a combined value of 7 is a very prohibitive restriction on this card. And I think even if you do miss what you're going for, if you're not playing mill and you don't get rid of like a really good card, I don't know. It's so free. It costs 0. It doesn't cost anything to play the card. If you've got like a high cost upgrade or something like that, it's so. Even if you miss, it doesn't feel that devastating. And when you hit something good, you hit something really good, and it's so cost effective. It's such good like ramp to getting into a better position in the game, and it's generally not at any detriment to your game plan.
My general feeling on the card is I'm just really excited to see the combined value, words in the card text. I don't think we've seen a new keyword yet, but that mechanic is really fun. It makes me feel better about when I make a bad roll, because I can't resolve everything together. But if I count it all up, it is actually a good roll with a card like this in my hand. I was trying to find it. I think there's a new battlefield too that kind of like lets you fix the cards that are on the top and the bottom of your deck out of your hand. And I think working that battlefield in with this card could be, a really nice combo.
I think there's so many things to think about this. Like this card is very similar. When I saw Fast Hands, I instantly had like a million ideas for deck builds because of all the fun things you can do. Like it opens up lots of parameters because now you can run really funny stuff that before, hey, you would never run this because you're never going to pay for it. Now, with Friends and I Places, if you happen to run into it, cool. If not, okay, sure, it's fodder for a reroll. But you can slot in a bunch of one of cards because if you just happen to hit Friends and I Places on, Lord knows, like, hey, say for example, this was a weird idea, but I thought this could be fun. You run Jabba with a ranged red character, so you can have access to that mill card. And then you start running ATST, and you play Friends in High Places, and guess what? You get an ATST for free. Okay, ATST, for zeros, not bad. And if you get one out, you easily have access to 7 or more of showing on your die sides, and you can trigger Friends in High Places consistently. I would probably only run one in the deck, but if I ever hit it, that would be like, hey, sorry, opponent, you're just gonna have to deal with this free ATST that I cast. Have fun with that.
It's so, even if you're not doing like these huge ATST plays, if I play this and I get a 2-cost upgrade for free, I'm like, awesome.
Yeah, sure.
It's so incredible, and it makes, especially since yellow villains is kind of resource intensive unless you're playing a Django suite essentially. It makes the stuff that's kind of 2-cost, 3-cost events and stuff like that a little bit less detrimental to your game plan once they come up, because you can play them with this, and it has so much flexibility and variety. And in any situation, if I draw 3 cards and get to play any of them or one of them for free and discard the rest of them, I'm awesome, sweet.
Yeah, there's very little downsides. I mean, you're not milling. It's like Scavenge, but on steroids. Like, you get 3 cards, you get one of them for free. Sure, Wirebrain made a fair point. The only downside I can see is if you draw 2 or 3 really good cards, and you have to play one, and you don't get the other 2. Okay, that sucks. But man, I'd rather hit all 3 of my really expensive cards with this and get to play one of them than I hit a bunch of 0-cost cards. Crap. Like, I got into like a hit and run or something, like, oh man, which can't actually be in the deck. But I the only question I have is, you think that aggro decks are actually going to be able to run this? Because you generally want to roll and resolve real fast, and this doesn't have that win condition, because if you're sitting on 7 or more, that's a lot of damage, and if you play this, you're giving your opponent 2 turns to get into, say, like a dodge or something that can just really hurt.
Yeah, I possibly might see some play with Infamous just to, sneak around that issue. But that would be my big concern with, leaving out that high of a number of dice on the table, because there's just so many ways to sweep them off.
Assuming we had no other cards, I don't think I'd run this in Django Balatik Trooper. Because I wanna resolve my range damage and hit you in the face. And I think right now the deck can do that fast enough that it doesn't have to worry about getting these free boosts and sort of sacrificing the safety of its dice. But it's still so good. I mean, I'd run a couple of these in Django Balatik Trooper just to see if it does work. Because there's no downside to it. It's just so good.
So it's so fun. And Andrew Larcher was saying you could use Pull the Strings, the one with the Emperor. What is it? You look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you can put any on the top or bottom, I think. How that goes. So, man, this opens up a lot of not only combo pieces, but it makes a lot of cards we've seen where we're like Pulling the Strings. Not a great card for just the Awakening set. You're never going to use it because there's no reason to. Friends in high places with, pulling the strings. All right. I see where we're going with this. I like it. So, lots of really, really, really interesting considerations. And that's my favorite thing about Destiny is in most traditional card games, it's just, hey, there is like a Johnny, Timmy, Spike deck. Run one of those three. You beat one, you lose to one, and then the other one you have a fairly decent matchup and see what happens. In Destiny, it's like, here's a new set. Also, everything you knew about deck building is kind of out the window because there's so many new options that are viable. The decks you have aren't bad. There's also new decks you're going to definitely be able to play, and the old decks you ran, you can slot in new cards, or you can have multiple variants of, Django Veers now has like 2 variants, maybe even 3 with some of these new cards. Balatik and buddies, you can run Balatik with a lot of different buddies. Even a Guavian enforcer, he still brings something to the table. So the game is never stale at any point because you're just seeing all these cards that make the game interesting and give you access to old cards that weren't really playable in the old meta. So I love it. I'm so excited about what we're going to see when Spirit of Rebellion comes out. I feel like we're going to see just a huge meta of, instead of what do we have, like 3 to 5 decks now? We're probably going to see an extra, 3 or 4 very competent decks in the meta. That's just great.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think I've ever played a trading card game or a collectible card game where everything has been mixed up this much with the second set. And I think a lot of us were kind of getting exhaustion from sort of the staleness of the meta as things were going on. And this is just, it's so exciting seeing these cards and, theory crafting and just getting excited about everything.
Right. All right, so here is our character we were talking about earlier, IG-88, the Assassin Droid. He is a yellow villain. He is legendary status, so there you go. There's another one of those. 12 health, 15 points, and 20 points for his elite and non-elite die lost, whatever you want to call it. His die faces are 2 range damage, 3 range damage, 1 shield, 2 shields for a resource, go figure, a special, a blank. His special effect is play a yellow weapon or equipment from your discard pile on this character, decreasing its cost by 2. What are your thoughts?
So in the Portland scene, we've got a local player that has been just clamoring for IG-88 since December. Played him in every single set in the old Decisive Star Wars trading card game. And I know he is just bonkers excited for this card, that it is actually a fantastic card. We talked about a lot of combos in the other cards that this character is going to be able to play around with just to make him even more bonkers. And the big thing for me is I love characters with strong dice and a lot of health because you get to keep those strong dice around for a long time. And he has both of those things. But his special is crazy that you get to bring those things back regardless of where they are and, get him some strong upgrades to play with at a discount. I just see nothing wrong with IG-88. So strong.
Yeah, he almost looks like a Vader with range damage instead, and just that health pool is great. He's pretty well costed for 2 dice. You're probably never going to run a 4 dice suite with him. But I mean, even despite that, he's such a big beat stick, and he just does it so well. I don't know. It's going to be really cool to see how he functions and what kind of weird combinations we can throw with him. Do you think that this IG-88 is more prone to having a red sidekick or a blue sidekick?
I would say red because ooh, man, dang, that's a super good question. So I'll let you go, Yeti, first.
Just kind of looking at the chat with the Andrew's kind of pointing out that the special has some downsides late game. He might be fully kitted and still hitting that special side. I definitely see this guy as like a kind of one-man powerhouse aggro character. you get to discard those yellow upgrades or weapons or equipment from your hand for some good rerolls to hit his 3 or 2 damage side early on, and get that stuff back, in the early to mid game. And I don't see it as being so bad in the late game having that special, because I don't think you're really going to make it to the late game with this guy. He's hitting for so hard for so little cost.
Yeah, like once IG88 goes down, and he's probably going to be your opponent's first target. I think everything kind of comes to a head, and you've essentially lost. So I think the early game is really important with him, and you're just searching for those special sides so that by turn 2, turn 3, you've got a full suite of upgrades for basically nothing, and you're just hitting your opponent with as much as you can before they can come back and hit you back.
There's a couple things I want to say about IG88. I find it interesting, though, about the color consideration. If you run it with blue, you obviously, we're all thinking about it, you get access to force speed, which, pew, 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 which is great, being able to just shoot people to death. I feel like I would probably run him with red, though, because red has, obviously, range damage. Blue is not known for range damage, so you do get blue characters. Great. And you'd probably run him with like a Night Sister because she's got range sides. But other than like force speed and maybe some Sith Holocron shenanigans, there's not much synergy. And I feel like you said, as an aggro character, you definitely want that speed and that synergy. And so red gives you access to not only speed but heavy amounts of burst damage, and you're gonna want to claim the battlefield. And you're going to be able to use things like, hey, here's dug in. IG88 has 3 shields. Hey, here's all these red, effects that you can get off that will help you stay alive, deal damage faster, and hey, don't worry about it. I think based on what we've seen, I think red is the way to go, but I'm sure there's obviously blue counterparts that'll be just as funky. It might be more of a jank deck, but I think you can put IG88 with blue and he'll be still nasty.
Yeah, I want to see this guy run with Death Trooper.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going.
And you'll notice neither of those guys make money. No resource sides, but you don't really have to if you do hit IG88 special. And I think it's going to be really important to get upgrades on him that you can possibly move over to your trooper once IG88 goes down. But what does Death Trooper have? 10 health?
Yep, he's 10. He's 10 for 10.
So 22 health. That's a lot of health to chew through.
No pay to shoot sides either.
Yep. I think they're going to make a really fun combo. I don't think blue has as strong of a combo to go with IG88 as Death Trooper right now.
Do you think this just becomes the new Django Veers beat stick then? Because my reaction to IG88 and Death Trooper is I'm going to spend my 2 resources to put down an upgrade, and use the rest of my cards to re-roll. And if you can't deal with it, I win.
Yeah, like GameSlayer was saying, there's nothing. He's asking, nothing wrong with IG88. There's no resource die, hard to pay for events and upgrades on the same turn. If you do use the special, you've already activating him. When I first saw IG88, it was like, oh, hey, cool. This guy basically turns cards you can't play from your hand into reroll fodder. So you're looking at, I don't even know of a card right now that they wouldn't be able to play, because you'd run like your F11Ds, your holdout blasters, your DH17. Have we seen a gun from yellow that's more than 2 in the set at this point? I'm not totally sure. Regardless, though, the more interesting thing is his effect that says play yellow weapon or equipment from your discard pile, decreasing the cost. That's in addition to the overwrite cost, as far as I'm concerned, because it's worded just like Imperial Armory, which you can use in conjunction with overwriting with the reduction of 1. So if you're sitting on like a 2-drop or even like a 1-drop, DH17, and you've got a 3-cost yellow weapon in your graveyard, you can overwrite and you don't pay anything. You're still fine. So he's just full of tricks and shenanigans, and man, if you get the right cards where there's no pay to shoot sides, you're going to be crushing people. I mean, yes, you're not making any money, so you're not going to be having strong removal suites, and you're not going to be able to pay for hardly anything. But you're going to be able to just roll and deal damage like a boss. And I think that's really how he's built when you put him with the Death Trooper is you roll damage, you deal damage. You don't really care about anything else. And you're rolling damage so consistently and so high, your opponent is eventually going to run out of event suites, removal cards. Like, sure, you remove all my stuff for the first 2 turns. And then after that, I'm loaded up and you can't stop me. Cool. Sounds fun.
I don't expect the IG-88 Death Trooper thing to be like top tier awesome meta deck, but I do think that it will represent a deck that is very good to introduce new players to, because it's pretty cut and dry. You want to equip stuff, you want to roll lots of damage, and you want to re-roll until you do that. So I don't anticipate that IG-88 will come out as like one of the great cards of the set, but it seems very fun. It seems very interesting to play, but I think the reliance on using that one special side for your ramp essentially is going to put it behind most of the super strong decks. But it's a fun card. It's interesting to play. But I think as a summary, it's for newer players. It's very easy to play, and it'll be interesting to see if there's anything that sort of helps emphasize that game plan.
All right, so let's take a look at Personal Shield. This is also a villain yellow card only. This is a upgrade equipment, costs you 2 resources. It has a 1 shield, 2 shield, 3 shield for 1 resource, a blank, and it has an effect before attached character is dealt 2 or more range damage. You may exhaust this upgrade to give attached character 1 shield. What do you guys think?
I look at this and I see a immobilize. I see a card that will keep you alive but will never win you the game. And at 2 cost, I just don't. I'm not excited about this, unfortunately.
Yeah, I definitely don't see this going into any damage when conditioned decks, or at least not consistently. It is confusing because it's almost like this card was made for Qui-Gon, and then they're like, no, we're going to give it to Villain Yellow instead. But I do see it as keeping those mill decks alive longer, and keeping them playing in the game so that they can get to their win condition. It is expensive, and it is strange that it has 2 miss sides when it costs 2. Even especially with the shields it's producing, the best die side is still going to cost you a resource.
Yeah, this is one of the few cards I don't have much to say about, because it's just kind of like, all right, that's a thing. I don't seriously know where I would play this card. If it was 1, I feel like that would probably be the sweet spot. 2 is really prohibitive, because I had the exact same thought. I'm like, you're paying 2 for 4 die sides? I mean, and they're not even amazing. Like, shields are great, don't get me wrong, but that 3 for 1 is just painful, because it essentially turns the card into a 3 cost card, because you roll it and then you pay 2 to play it, 1 to resolve it. It's like, it's more and more expensive the longer you go on. And there's so many other cards that can be useful. And it's not even like a hunker down on a stick either. If it was just, hey, before attached characters dealt damage, tap it, get a shield, like Dooku on a stick, that'd be great. But the fact you have to take 2 or more, it's like, it's not unfair. I mean, it's still good. Just, yeah, I agree. This would have been phenomenal for Qui-Gon. He would have just made shields all day. But for villains, I'm not entirely sure where this is supposed to be. It's very probable this is another seed card where right now it's not viable, but in future where it's like, hey, if you put a shield on a character, do a thing where Dooku gets better automatically, and this becomes a powerful card because by effects. That might be where this card is meant to be, just because they do design these sets way in advance, and they do know, hey, Awakenings was done while they were developing this, so they have knowledge of what the future sets are in the process of development. So there might be something in set 3, or even something we haven't seen yet in this set that is going to combo with personal shield. Like, oh, okay, well now it makes way more sense. Kind of like, the whole pulling the strings combo with Friends in High Places. Like, that makes sense. Like, that card is now a viable filter to get those 3 cards you want on the top of your deck, so you get the best possible Friends in High Places play humanly possible. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not too crazy about it.
Yeah, my favorite part about this card is that it makes villain worse. And I feel like the Spirit of Rebellion needs a little bit of that. I feel like villain just got a huge upgrade, and as a person that plays hero a lot, I feel a little bit left behind.
Yep. So let's move along and take a look at someone who I'm surprised made it, but I really like his character. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Unkar Plutt? Something like that. So this is a junk dealer. He has 10 health, villain, yellow, with 10 points for 1 die, 13 points for 2 dice. His die faces are 1 focus, 1 disrupt, 2 disrupt, 1 resource, plus 2 resources modified. Woohoo! A blank. His action is remove any number of your dice showing a combined value of 3 or more. Then discard a random card from an opponent's hand and gain resources equal to its cost. Alright, what do you think? I have a lot of love for this guy.
I think he's interesting but awkward. I don't know what kind of a deck he actually fits into. The action is obviously pretty interesting because you're ramping up with the resources. I guess this is sort of like a crime lord orientated thing, building up the resource and trying to get things out and kill things quick, but it doesn't have any discard sides. The 2 disrupt sides are a little bit awkward. The plus 2 resource side is interesting, but I don't know that there's, outside of Villain Mill, which already has Jabba, I'm not sure what you're going to pair this with or what you're going to ramp into that you really, really want this guy for.
So I love Simon Pegg, so I'm definitely going to find a use for this card somehow. I like his action just because it's really unique, and it seems like one of those things that we're going to be able to combo off of as more cards drop. I like Lassie. I'm struggling to find out who his partner is. I don't know who's going to be on the board with him to really get things to a win. But I still think it's going to be a lot of fun to play with him, even if you're not playing to win.
I really just, so many things. Okay, so I play weird janky decks. So the first thing I thought of was Elite Unkar, Elite Jabba, and a Stormtrooper, because that's 13, 14, and 7. So that's 30 exactly. You gain access to the red that you want. You have range damage, which you can now use the Super Mill card and pull out cards from your opponent's hand, money, and then you have enough resources to play all these expensive cards like Blackmail, not Force Stroke, what am I thinking of, Crime Lord. With red you could theoretically run things such as High Stormtrooper. You can actually put out some significant damage. I thought about running an ATST because you would definitely have enough money coming in and the option with your die symbols to play Friends in High Places. My maths don't add up, Game Slayer says. Did I miss something? I thought Jabba was 14 for Elite. Even still, you could run 1 Unkar, double Jabba, and a Trooper. You could run a 3-die team. I definitely... Anywho, you're probably right. My math is something wrong. But regardless, Unkar eats your resources, Jabba eats your cards, and the Trooper does the damage. So there's so many fun things you. Now, is it perfect? No. I feel like his action is probably the most unique action of the game in terms of mechanics, because a lot of other people, I think Kylo's the biggest one to compare him to. Like, Kylo's like, look at a card, deal damage equal to its cost. He's just like, remove that card and get money. so much better, I think, because they lose that card and you make money off of it. Cool. This makes running like a jetpack in the team viable because, I rolled a +3 modified side. I can't use it. That's what you think. I'm going to take a card and turn that into money. Oh,
he's definitely better than Kylo's special. Kylo's special hits, rarely misses often, but it's missing on things like electroshocks or probes that, if this hits, it's, still exciting. You're still getting rid of that card. You're not getting as many resources, but just getting rid of control out of hand is great. I don't know if your maths are bad or not, but like I like the lineup that you've put him together with. I'm definitely excited to try him out. This is actually the first time I've been excited about a supporty villain yellow character. I've never really been into Jabba, but Unkar Plutt just seems really fun.
Yeah, I think that the suite of characters that you were listing is 1 point off. Because Jabba is 11, Unkar is 13, and then the Trooper is 7.
That's
so
right.
You'd be at 31.
Yeah.
I think Unkar kind of represents another card that has a lot of potential. I like the cost. It's very low costed. It doesn't take a lot to get the elite version, and with the elite version, you obviously have 2 sides that have or a value of 2. I think this is a card to look out for future sets, because if he finds the right support, or if he's supporting the right main guy with 16 costs for an elite, he can do some pretty fun stuff.
Someone actually said you can run this guy with Elite Krennic. Oh, Gameslayer did. That's not a bad thought either. You've got, once again, getting that range damage is really, really great because you have access to, what's the card? Loose Ends, where you're able to mill 4 cards for 2 resources. That's actually not a bad idea, because Krennic basically brings in that extra Death Trooper when you have the battlefield. So you'll have the dice you need, you'll have the damage you need, you'll have a buttload of symbols, so your consistency is out the door. Like, you're going to need a lot of filtering to turn your dice to the sides you need. But you have massive amounts of disrupt. You're going to have high enough numbers where you're going to be able to use Unkar. And just so you're aware, you can use his action multiple times each time you get an action. So you remove 3, mill a card, make some money. Get your next action, remove 3, mill a card, get some action, or get some more money. If you're just unfortunately not able to roll money, or I'm sorry, if you're not able to roll damage, but you're able to have 3 or more on your die faces, you can keep eating cards out of their hand. So he essentially has mill built into his kit, even though he's not showing those die faces. And I think a lot of people are going to underestimate that, because when you see Jabba, it's pretty straightforward. He eats your cards, he eats your money. Unkar, it's like, oh, he just disrupts me and makes money. Okay, I don't care. I'm not going to worry about it. Cool. Next action, I remove my +2 resource and whatever other die, and I take a card out of your hand and make money. Wait, what? Oh, cool. You see that Millennium Falcon you were going to play? I'll get rid of that and make 5 resources. Yeah, that's pretty good. Or, hey, you hit Force Speed. Force Speed's gone. You don't have to worry about it. Wah, wah. and with yellow in your hand, you can play Confiscation in your deck, which, once again, turn off Force Speed, turn off Holocron. If someone's running a Holocron deck, guess what? They're going to have Mind Probes at 4. They're going to have Force Throws at 3. Force Chokes at 2. Oh, Unkar doesn't care about that. He'll take it out of your hand and make money. Oh.
My big concern is you're typically going to be getting rid of 2 dice. And because it's a random card, I feel like the random factor is going to, I don't know, if you miss on this, it feels like you're losing a lot of your churn in order to get that benefit. Like if you get a 0 cost Intimidate, you're kind of hating yourself. And it's just, I think there's enough situations where you're going to miss using his action ability and get rid of 2 of your dice potentially that you could have re-rolled or used for something else. That it's going to, I don't know. I think he's waiting for the right complement. And until we get that complement, I think he's going to be a fun dude to run in some janky decks. But until then, I feel like he needs a little bit of oomph. He's just missing something. He's got to have a partner.
He needs those extra
play a little bit of
portions.
devil's advocate on his action. Playing against a lot of mill decks. Again, I don't play mill myself. A lot of times I'll find myself just holding on to one last card in hand or two last cards in hand as I'm, just waiting for natural damage to kill my mill opponent. His action is strong in the late game because he can use it, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. I can't use a control card out of my hand to remove the number of dice that he has showing because I've just milled myself. I think if he finds himself into the late game, he's going to help edge those mill decks to the win.
Speaking of mill cards and things of damage dealing, we have Vibro knucklers, which we'll go over it and we'll talk about it, but I think this is probably the answer for mill decks that they desperately needed. So it is a villain yellow, obviously, upgrade weapon, costs 3 resources. It has a 1 melee side, 1 melee side, 2 melee side, 1 discard side, 2 discard side, a blank. This has ambush, and the effect is before resolving this die, you may spend 1 resource to increase its value by 1. What are your thoughts?
I like this card a lot more yesterday when the Polish translation was Vibro Knuckles. It's definitely decreased in value for me being knucklers. It's just confusing.
Go away, you're drunk.
I don't know. I think it's interesting. I've not played villain yellow melee. They're definitely trying to give some cards out there to give it a little bit of oomph. I like how it's kind of the exact opposite of Gen Urso. You've got discard sides and damage sides on the same card to kind of mix together those win conditions. And honestly, like after playing Kylo Dooku for a couple of months, even if you're going for damage, getting rid of a couple of cards out of your opponent's hands, it's really going to just limit their gameplay. So I think this card's really good, and it just gets better with the ambush. Not losing a turn, putting it out there. The 3 cost seems pricey, but yellow makes money, and generally does not have an issue with resources on the table. So they're going to get it out there, and they're generally going to have that resource available to spend to do the increase. So I mean, this is a 2, 2, 3, 2, 3-sided die for 3 resources.
I think if Vibro Knucklers, I agree with you, it should be Knuckles. But I think if this set the standard for what a 3-cost upgrade would do, we'd be playing a lot more 3-cost upgrades. There's no modified sides. All the sides are good. They do something. It has ambush. It has the potential to use up excess resources in order to do more of what it's trying to do. And you don't have to just resolve it by itself in order to get that effect. Looking at this, I want to run it in Dooku Jabba. I mean, this does nothing but emphasize and enhance that suite of characters. It helps with the melee damage, helps get rid of low health opponents on the other characters on the opposite field. So if you're looking at like a trooper or a Balatique, and you are playing a mill deck that doesn't necessarily have the capacity to get rid of that character, it helps Dooku get out the damage to get rid of that 7 or 8 or 9 health. And on top of that, it has the discard sides, so it helps with Jabba's mill. And it's not restricted to a blue character or a yellow character, so you can equip it onto a blue character. It is obviously pricey, but blue or yellow villains are constantly getting resources. So I actually really like this card. I don't think it changes the game in a magnificent way or does anything that's especially exciting or interesting, but it's consistent, it's good, and it helps out decks that are using melee and discard, and we have a pretty good deck that's doing that right now.
This card has good and interesting thoughts for my mill deck. So the first thing is the biggest problem with Jabba and Vader is that you're I mean it's a hard battle because you're not dealing enough damage to kill anyone generally, unless you get just 3 after 3 after 3. And even when you're milling people, like you still have to stay alive. You still have to remove dice properly, and you still have to play really, really well. Like mill decks, if you make one mistake, you're generally going to lose the game. Most other decks you can afford 2, potentially 3, before it's just too late to do anything, and you're just in a lot of trouble. So Vibro Knucklers is all of the things you want because it can combo well with Vader and Jabba. You can put this on whoever you want. You do get the ambush. You can potentially, for 1 resource, deal 6 damage if you get the 3 off Vader and the 2 on Vibro Knucklers. That's rough. That's a lot of damage. And if you get that on turn 2, 12 damage is no joke. If you just happen to not get the damage, but you roll it with Jabba, hey, if Jabba rolls his 2 disrupt or his 2 discard, and you get the 2 discard on Vibro Knucklers, you can get rid of 5 cards out of your opponent's hand for 1 resource. This does both things you desperately need: is massive amounts of removal or card removal, and lots of good damage. The biggest problem it creates is your cost curve of the deck goes up astronomically if you run this and Blackmail. So I feel like you have to make a conceding for one or the other, because, or I mean, you could arguably get, I mean, there's all kinds of combinations. Like you get rid of Cunning, run Vibro Knucklers and Blackmail, get rid of Thermal Detonators, Prime Lord. There's lots of options, but that's my biggest thing, that the mill decks, I mean, in Villains just getting period, they're getting options. Like you don't have to run both Blackmail and Vibro Knucklers. You can run one or the other. You can run 1 and 1. You can run like 2 and 1. Like you have choices, and that's my favorite thing about these cards. Is in Awakenings you had like no choices. Basically built a deck, and that was kind of it. You might have 1 or 2 tech slots, but most decks were going to be fairly identical. Now you can definitely see a hard mill deck running Blackmail, or a deck that's trying to mix and match damage and mill with Vibro Knucklers, and now you have 2 completely different archetypes of Jabba mill, which I think is great because some people want to go for that damage and some people want to go for that control, and now you can. Currently you can't do either. You just have one build.
So one card that I think this has really good synergy with is a Close Quarters Assault, which is you count up the number of dice showing melee sides, and then you discard that number of sides from your opponent's hand, and it costs 0. I've been wanting to slot that card into decks for a really long time. I think Vibro Knucklers really helps that get in there, because it just kind of drives home that mill win condition, and keeps it aggressive.
That's actually really interesting. I didn't even think about that in Dooku Jabba, because obviously Dooku has the 2 melee sides, or even Vader has 2 melee sides. And if you get melee weapons going, this kind of emphasizes that. I mean, if you're discarding 3 cards from your opponent for just getting rid of a card in your hand and having dice out on the field, that's really good. And people are actually mentioning this with Grievous and games in the chat, and Game Slayer brought up that with Gaffy Stick and Flamethrower and now Vibro Knuckles, I'm going to stand my ground. It's Vibro Knucklers. Yellow actually has a pretty big selection of melee weapons, some of them better than others, obviously, and most of them pretty expensive. But I think if we saw a yellow villain melee character, they would have a pretty good selection of upgrades to use.
Yeah, I stand by that, and this is great because it has no modified sides, but Django is a melee character. He's got 1 melee side.
That is true. That is true. He has access to that. Another great question that came up in the chat is, can you use Ace in the Hole in conjunction with Vibro Knucklers?
What do you mean? Like in order to use these?
So if you roll out Vibro Knucklers with Ace in the Hole, would you be able to pay 1 resource to resolve the die face with the +1?
I think so. I mean, you look at the card text for specials, right? With Ace in the Hole, you're resolving a special sided die. You've got to refer to the card text to know what that does. I feel like this is kind of in the same spectrum of that. This is the resolution of that die is tied to this card. It doesn't matter where the card is.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able, especially with, say, something like, yeah, that's actually a perfect example. Like, you have to reference the card text. As I'm pretty sure in the updated rules reference guide, regardless of where the card is, if the die is in the, like, you're still going to reference what the card text says. If it's in your hand, if it's on the field, if it's in your graveyard, you still get to trigger it. But that is a fair question. We might get an updated rules reference FAQ for that, but I would see no reason why you couldn't.
So I can't imagine, because if you look at Crime Lord, you obviously have to look at the card in order to, pay the additional 4 resources. If that's the case, then I have to imagine so is this.
All right, well, that is the end of the show. Thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. We had a blast. Once again, I mean, we have so many cards to go through. There's just a bunch of stuff coming out of the woodwork. And this weekend on the Knights of Ren podcast, we are going to be revealing our spoilers. We also have a special guest, Jeremy Zwin. He is the co-designer, the new co-designer of Destiny. So we're going to be talking with him. He's got a lot of stuff to. I don't want to spoil anything. We've got a lot of stuff to share about the game. I think it's going to be really interesting. But once again, big thanks to Pearl and Lassie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Is there anything you guys want to plug? Do you guys have any kind of favorite thing you want to send everybody to go check out?
Lassie and I are playing in a tournament tomorrow. It's a 40-person tournament for an entire box of Destiny boosters and some pretty sweet playmats. That'll be streaming on my Twitch channel, which is Pearl Yeti. And we'll have the finals and the semifinals streaming, I think, starting around 2 o'clock tomorrow, Pacific time.
All right, so yeah, check out. It's just Pearl Yeti, no space, no nothing.
Yep, no space, no nothing.
Yep, so if you guys are watching, check out Pearl Yeti and his Twitch channel. He's going to be doing all that good stuff, and we'll have you guys on again to talk about more cards in the future. A big thanks to everyone in the chat. Also, Master Ku, he's a part of the Jedi Trial, so don't go watch or listen or read their spoilers or anything, because Jedi are evil and they'll change your mind. And they don't have cookies, so yeah, be careful. We have cookies. Knights of Ren have lots of cookies.
Villain cards are better anyways. You know your loyalties need to lie. Come on, man.
No, seriously, like, check out Jedi Trials. We took a bunch of their spoilers in the show. And there's so many other people to mention. There's too many. So thank you everybody for watching. It was a blast. We'll upload this to the webpage. Once again, thanks to Pearl Yeti and Lassie. We will see you guys in the near future. Have a great weekend, y'all.